Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the January 28th Board of Selectmen meeting. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please note that this meeting is being televised for broadcast live on Easton's cable channel, and you can also look this up and watch it on demand or watch it online on television. So the first item that we have up is a change in DBA request relating to a package store all alcohol license for Main Essentials LLC doing business as Essentials on Main to Main Essentials LLC doing business as Bliss, 150 Main Street, Easton, Mass. The applicant, do you want to come up, the applicants up to the table? You can go sit at those two seats. The applicant, David Howe, is requesting a change of DBA from Essentials on Main to Bliss, and the application and related paperwork are in our packet. The collector has confirmed that there's no taxes due, and a new business certificate has already been filed with the town clerk's office. So you want to tell us about the changes that you have
Yes, so I'm David Howe, as everyone I think knows. You know, we had worked at Essentials on Main, hoping to open it, and it just never came to fruition. And my daughter has since graduated college and has been into fashion and wanted to open a clothing and home goods, and you know, we'll have the small alcohol in there, not, you know, what we planned on before, wines and high-end spirits, and that's about it. We're looking to open, I think it's May 12th, will be a little small opening, and then that sad day will be the March 12th. I think we're opening.
Okay, and it's called Bliss, and
Bliss.
It's
It's
like a boutique?
Bliss Lifestyle Boutique, but
Okay.
the lifestyle boutique meaning it's a kids thing. Or younger people. It covers everything. It covers some homes goods, covers, you know, some alcohol and a little bit of.
So it's going to be cool.
I think it's pretty cool.
Okay.
I know it's costing me some money, so.
All right, anybody have any questions?
Yeah, just, Connor, how many all alcohol licenses do we have in town?
For package stores or for restaurants?
No, I'm just thinking about it overall.
Sure. So for package stores like this, we have 5 allowed by right, and the license at this location is actually one that was approved through special legislation after a town meeting vote, I think, in 2014.
Okay.
So we have 6 total
And
with this.
eventually, I would probably ask the board down the road to move the alcohol license potentially to a different location. That would be, it's in a later plan, so that would be the goal. Right now, I'm opening it there with the liquor license, but ultimately, we would want to try to move it to a different location if possible.
Okay, and I know you know this, but I just want to say it on the air for
Yes.
folks at home. If your daughter is not aware, just make sure that she knows that we do have compliance checks for alcohol in Easton.
Absolutely.
And that she knows the rules of serving, and I'm sure she does.
She
but
does.
I just
And we
wanna-
won't be doing any serving there. It's just
No, but it's selling alcohol.
yes. She's well aware, and everyone that works there will be well aware, and there'll be, it'll be no issue, I guarantee you that.
All right, great.
She'll be carding me.
All right, would somebody like to make a motion to accept the change in DBA from Essentials LLC to Main Essentials LLC doing business as Bliss?
So moved. Second?
So that's Craig and Chuck, all in favor? Unanimous. Great,
Thank
good
you.
luck with the new business.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
So next we'll do an acceptance of the gift from Full and Waterproofing Construction.
So as the board may recall at your last meeting, the The Board of Selectmen were asked to accept a generous donation of $1,000 from Fullen Waterproofing for the police department. State law requires the Selectmen vote to accept gifts of that nature. There was actually also a gift to the fire department, which we just got the paperwork a day after the agenda was posted. So similar donation, similar deposit, which would be a donation into the fire department gift account to be used by the fire department at a later date, their discretion.
Okay. Great, and then just as a shout out to Fullen, for people that don't know what kind of a company is, Fullen Waterproofing and Construction was established in 1969 by Patrick J. Fullen and his wife Noreen. They specialize in masonry restoration, waterproofing, and historic preservation of masonry structures, and they're a certified women-owned business. So glad to have them in Easton and thank them very much for their support of our public services. Would somebody like to make a motion to accept the gift?
So moved.
Second.
Tom and then Craig, all in favor? Unanimous. Great, thank you. Connor, do you think, in light of, we have a 6:15 public hearing, what would you like to do next? Any of the contract awards, or?
Well, I think that the amendment for Perkins Eastman is certainly doable, but for 6:15.
I wanted to take C and B out of order so that they could
Okay.
do the presentation first and
Sure.
then go into that.
Okay, if that's the case, then
We'll go to the acceptance of the
item
resignation.
D, sure.
Okay.
So in your packet, you'll see a memo submitted by Town Clerk Danielle Sicard indicating that one of the members of our Human Resources Board, John Curran, recently resigned. The vacancy has been being advertised for a few weeks. We'll bring any applicants forward to the board for consideration for appointment at your next meeting on the 11th. So I would ask that the board consider accepting Mr. Curran's resignation with regrets.
Okay. Thank you to John for serving. It's a very important committee. And this will be a roll call vote, so we'll need a motion, a second, and then roll call.
So moved.
Second.
Craig, Tom,
King, yes.
Broussard, Curran.
Parger, Curran.
Full Janetti, Curran.
Mills, Curran.
Okay. Thank you to John for your service. Can we do a contract award, or?
Sure. Attached in your packet, you'll see a memo submitted by the fire chief for 4 radio repeaters for the fire department. This is being purchased through a regional purchasing grant, and it will eventually be reimbursed 100% through MEMA. Chief is here if you would like to make a couple of notes about it.
Good evening, Fire Chief Kevin Podgers. Just to clarify, it's a county-wide collaborative grant that all the fire chiefs and emergency management directors agreed to take a portion of our EMPG grants in 17. We put them together, and this will purchase repeaters for the fire mutual aid system throughout Bristol County.
So does that mean that they'll all work with each other across the
Yes.
county?
Yep.
And you'll be able to use those
Correct.
when?
Yep.
That's
It's
changed.
part of a phased plan to build out the county radio communication system.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
I do not.
David? No? All right. Do we have to vote on this?
Yes, this is a contract being awarded.
Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion to award this contract to Comtronics Corporation?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor? Unanimous. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Conservation restriction?
Well,
We're going too-
moving a little
too
fast. Andrea asked me. No. Yes, so I expect Andrea to be here to speak to that, but
Some point, okay.
given that it's later on the agenda, I don't think she anticipated being here that quickly.
Okay.
If you'd like, we could take item J.
Sure.
So, as the board may recall, at a meeting in September, specifically on the 24th of September, the board voted to approve the award of 300 Foundry Street, or the disposition of that land, to Global Property Services in BAMSI. This was after quite a few months of work by the Affordable Housing Trust Board to pull this RFP together, where this piece of property would go on to be used for acquired brain injury housing. The board voted to, award that contract at the time, and tonight we just have the formality of the vote voting to execute closing and related documents, including the purchase and sale that has been effectuated since then after your vote to award. And there's a specific motion that's been prepared working with council to do so, and to authorize Dottie as chair to execute any other kind of miscellaneous paperwork related to this to complete this transaction. I don't know, Dave, if you wanted to speak to this project. This is something a board you're on has worked on.
Yeah, just to make it real quick, you know, the Affordable Housing Trust had worked very hard at working on this for the last year and a half, trying to find the right fit for that particular piece of property, and you know, we're really proud of it. I think it's a great use of the money. It's going to go to help a lot of people that basically they have to meet certain financial requirements to be there, and people that are just really genuinely need the help. And I think it's a great project. Ultimately, I'm very proud of it. So I'm looking forward to signing the purchase sale agreement. So.
And how many bedrooms is that?
It's a duplex. I think it was kind of. I think it was.
8 bedroom?
It was. Yeah, I think it was 8 bedrooms. It was a little bit bigger than their typical housing unit, but.
In that kind of project, each unit counts towards the subsidized housing
Exactly.
inventory.
So it was just a great match for what we were looking for. It was a lot of work. That's a tough committee to get things done with all the laws that are in place and stuff, as you've probably went through before.
When you said a year and a half, I think it was even longer than
Yeah, I
that,
think
because when I was on the
right.
trust, I think
Yeah.
we were talking about that land for that, so.
So it was
Nice.
it was good, and everybody worked really hard on it, and it was good. It was good. It was a good collaboration. So it's great.
Great, and it'll be nice to see that come to fruition.
Yep.
All right, would somebody like to make you have the motion on that?
Motion to authorize the chair of the board to execute the pending closing documents and any related documents necessary to effectuate said closing associated with the disposition of 300 Foundry Street for acquired brain injury group housing to Global Property Services, Brockton Area Multi-Service Center, Inc. Services, Inc.
Second that.
All in favor? Unanimous.
Kudos to the Affordable Housing Trust and our colleague David for all the work that was done.
Thank you. So we have 2 minutes before our 6:15 scheduled hearing. We're going a little bit quick tonight, so running out of some of these little quick ones to present before then.
We can open the warrant if you would like. That's item I,
Okay,
if you would like.
sure.
So it seems quite early, given that it's still getting dark so early. It's still so cold out, but we need to open the warrant for town meeting in May. So in accordance with the charter, annual town meeting will be Monday, May 20, 2019 at 7 p.m., Oliver Ames High School Auditorium. And I'm asking the board vote to open the warrant for that town meeting with a closing date of Monday, February 25th at 4:30 p.m. for the submission of warrant articles by interested departments and boards and committees. As is our practice, following this vote, should you take it, my office will send a memo out to everyone tomorrow morning letting them know to get that process rolling.
Okay, great. Anybody have any questions on that? So if somebody would like to make a motion to open the annual town meeting warrant,
So moved. Second.
all in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Great. And it is 6:15. Do you want to read the hearing notice, Craig?
Sure, and I apologize if I butcher the corporation name. The Board of Selectmen of Easton, as licensing authorities, will hold a public hearing in the Colleen A. Corona Boardroom, 136 Elm Street, Easton, Mass., on Monday, January 28th, 2019, at 6:15 p.m. to consider an act upon the application of Matswana Papi Corporation, I apologize, for a transfer of Section 15 off-premises wine and salt beverage licenses from Mawari Inc., doing business as White Rose Pantry, to Mahanswamp Papi Corporation, doing business as White Rose Pantry, for premises situated at 277 Turnpike Street, Easton, Mass., with a plan on file at the Selectmen's office.
Thank you. My name is Matthew Porter. I'm an attorney from Viera and D. John Filippo here in Easton. I'm the attorney for Mahant Swami Bapa Corporation. With me is Prashant Patel. Mr. Patel is a 50% shareholder in the corporation, the president of the corporation, and he'll also be the manager of the license itself. So this relates to the sale of White Rose Pantry. Obviously, we're here directly related to the transfer of the beer and wine license. It's been a very smooth transition thus far with the seller, Joseph Morawis, who's been there for quite a long period of time, has been very helpful in the transition. All of our financing is in order. We've already had the lease assigned over to us. So with that, I can certainly answer any questions that the board may have. Mr. Patel and the other shareholder are both very experienced in the liquor industry. I think Mr. Patel's been in the industry for the last 10 years or so, if not more. So certainly understands the responsibilities that come along with the license.
Sure. And like I had said, you were here earlier when I said to one of the previous people, we are a college town, so we do
Sure.
have the compliance checks, and we take that very seriously. And one of the worst things that we have to do is have people come before us when there is a compliance failure. Nobody likes that, so just want to make sure, obviously if you've been doing it for a while, you know how that works. So
Yes, one of my other location in Waltham is pretty close to one of the university, which we get a lot of kids from the college. So we are very used to how it what's the importance of checking the IDs and stuff.
right. Any questions, Chuck?
Yes, Madam Chair, I do remember, excuse me, in prior times of having the TIPS program in town. Is that still something that's required? And is it required of every salesperson, whether in a bar or in a grocery store?
I don't think it's required, but I think it's recommended.
So Prashant does have it. So he's alcohol tip certified.
Okay.
Yep. So they already have that in place. And then generally with any of their other locations, it's always been that any employees that are selling liquor are required to have the tip certification as well. So
Okay,
it not
that's
only
good to
helps the
hear.
town, but it helps these guys. So they don't want any issues either. So.
Well, the thing that people don't realize is if you have somebody working for you that makes the mistake of serving someone underage,
Your mistake.
it's your mistake, and if you have to, miss some days of business, it's very costly, so.
Sure.
Anybody else?
And I think the only thing, just to clarify, so the common vic for the deli is not being transferred as of today. So while the seller is selling, two of the individuals that have been managing the deli itself are going to be continuing on through the deli through a sublease with us. So if the board sees something within the next couple weeks or so for the CV license, those are our subtenants.
Okay.
What's the CV license?
Common vic license, so in order for them to,
Yep.
related to the deli itself, and I think it's because there's a few seats there, where you can sit after that. So that'll be all that
There's
is.
no other,
No, it's just the alcohol transfer at this time.
okay. All right, if somebody would like to make a motion to approve the transfer of the package store wine and malt license from Marawi Incorporated, doing business as White Rose Pantry, to, I can't say this on a good day, let alone with a cold, Mahant Swami Bapa Corporation, doing business as White Rose Pantry, 277 Turnpike Street, Easton.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous. Congratulations and good luck with your business.
Appreciate it.
All right. Dr. Cabral, if you want to come up with your team and give us an update on the early elementary school project.
Sure, so Dottie, just to be clear, we're treating this as item C first and then the contract?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, Dr. Cabral.
Hello, thank you for having me this evening. I'm joined, of course, by Jane Martin, who is the chair of the School Planning Committee. if you have any questions that she could answer as well. So we thought it would be timely to give you an update on the progress so far of the school planning committee. We do not have the completion of the feasibility and schematic design phase, but we wanted to bring to your attention. We do have, as you see, a further agenda item that I think is related, and going over this as a summary will help understand why we're asking for your consideration of that tonight.
I already have this.
You were sent prior for your packets this long spreadsheet. I just included a color copy for you this evening, and that's what's coming around now. It's the same information. I also wanted to note for the public that everything that you're seeing tonight and all that we're talking about is available on our project website, and I would encourage people to see that for more information. That is at www.eastonproject.com. eastoneesproject.com for early elementary school. I'll repeat that again when we're finished. As you can see on the first sheet, the options assessment, one of the biggest jobs of the school planning committee at this point is to narrow down the many possibilities or configurations to one that will be advanced to the schematic design process. As you are well aware, that is an extremely expensive process to have a schematic design, and only one will be chosen for that reason. MSBA, or the Massachusetts Building Authority, is the school building authority, is very prescriptive of what they require in terms of information from us. So in addition to a base repair cost for all of the 3 elementary schools, we also need to furnish them with a vetted out cost and configuration and feasibility for both an elementary school to replace center school at approximately 235 students, and an elementary school that would accommodate all 3 of our current elementary schools. We also have to provide them with an addition renovation for both models and a new school option for both models. As you can see, that comes out to several different configurations. We haven't at this point really had to make a lot of decisions as a committee because some of them get narrowed down on their own in terms of the feasibility of the land that is available. There are many tests that are done on that. The engineers have gone in, traffic studies have been done. The supporting walls of the building determine whether it is a good choice for a renovation, for example. So what you see in front of you are the 7 options that we sent to the MSBA for approval in our most recent submission. I will tell you, though, that the school planning committee subsequently has voted on 4 that they're going to recommend go on for further consideration. So out of the 7 you see here, and I'll just explain how this is set up, the first 3, if you look at the heading up at the top, those are the 3 that address just the center school of 235 students. The 4 to the right are the district-wide configuration possibilities. So to go back to the ones on the left, you can see underneath all of the considerations that have to be made in terms of a building and the needs based on all of the input that has been given to us from the community, the staff, parents. The school building committee has collected information. These are all of the quote-unquote positives and negatives of the design. What meets the needs that the community has established as important and what does not. And they've color-coded them, which is why I provided it to you in color. Red and green, for those green would be positive and red would be negative. All of these fit the school plan in terms of the educational programming. We wouldn't go forward with anything that did not. The 4 that the committee, for various reasons, decided to put forward are, and you can see next to the picture of the school at the top, there's a letter and a number. So C1 is Center School 1. So Center School 1, the addition renovation on the center school property. C3 which is a new center school only, the smaller configuration. At the Parkview property, you have to submit a minimum of 1 addition renovation and 1 new for the smaller school. I will tell you that second one was not widely embraced by the committee, but it is a requirement you put forward a new option for Parkview. And as you can see, the new school at Center was not chosen. There are many considerations there, including the loss of outdoor space and the traffic, which were extremely problematic. And so the committee is moving on from that option. On the right, you can see DW's district-wide options. They have chosen to move forward DW2, which is an add reno at Parkview School, and DW4, which is a new school at Parkview site for the 3 school configuration. We don't know yet which will actually be chosen because while a preliminary traffic study was done, we've determined at this point that in order to further explore what can happen at the Parkview campus, we're very sensitive to the fact that it's a neighborhood school and there's a lot of traffic due to the other schools on the campus. So at this point, it's prudent to move forward with a more in-depth traffic study. So the center school has pretty much been determined that the Depot Street location would be extremely problematic in terms of having enough space to have the queue lines for all the vehicles that would need to be at that site. And there aren't really any other access roads that we could tap into. The Parkview site, however, has a lot of potential options because of the larger campus. And so the study that's going to be done with your approval is to study the entire campus past Oliver Ames High School, on the other side of the middle school, behind Parkview, and 2 blocks out of that entire radius to see if there are any other configurations that the traffic expert and engineers can suggest as a possibility to alleviate not just the traffic if a school was added to the Parkview site, but how the entire campus could potentially work into that solution, which for any parents that have ever been on that campus or currently have that lovely commute every day know the entire campus really could use that kind of a look. So this has the potential of rectifying some of the issues we have on the campus.
Would that study also include the consideration for the public safety services that exist around that campus?
Yes, the designers are consulting with police, fire, and the DPW on all of the studies, including this one. On the back of the sheet, you have the first draft of the cost of each of these configurations. Just to remind you, the 4 that they're still looking at, on the left where it says center school only, it's the first and third one, and where it says district-wide, it's the second and fourth one. The reason that the bar graph is broken up is because MSBA provides a reimbursement rate. Right now, for the feasibility portion, for the feasibility and schematic design portion, our reimbursement rate is 52.26% of eligible costs. Now, eligible costs is very important to note because not everything is eligible. There are some site preparation work, septic system issues, and a litany of other things that are not reimbursement eligible. But taking all of those things into consideration, Perkins Eastman has estimated what they believe the cost for each of those options would be. The darker blue at the bottom is the potential district share of the total, and the top is the potential grant that we could receive for that project. On the far right, also a requirement of MSBA, is the estimated base repair cost of the 3 elementary schools. So, in other words, without a project to simply repair the schools so that they can remain open with no programmatic improvements, space changes, or additional classrooms to meet the educational plan, it would cost $86 million, if only, $501,882. It's there for comparison purposes, but also because that is a requirement that we have to provide that figure. So all three of those schools have been fully reviewed by the experts in this process. The traffic study is meant to hopefully give us a better idea if it is viable to continue pursuing the Parkview site as a potential site for the larger configuration of the school. We do have a contract of $55,000 for that study. It does still fall within the appropriation that the town voted for at town meeting for the feasibility and schematic design. We're currently under budget, and including that $55,000, we're still under budget and projected to be under budget at this time.
So do you want to just speak a little bit about the MSBA and like the checks and balances that are in place from that, the kind of people that are on that panel?
Sure. There are so many checks and balances, so I would encourage anyone with a great deal of time on their hands to go to the MSBA website. It's actually a very, very informative website. You do need some time to go through it, however. It's very user-friendly, and they involve engineers, architects, building authority representatives, traffic experts. They're very capable of leading us as lay people through this process. And while it is arguably an arduous process, we are extremely thankful that it is so prescriptive, because there is a lot to consider, especially to be the most fiscally responsible in this pursuit. So I would encourage people to see the website, but all along the way, every single thing that's done by the school planning committee, which was also prescribed by the MSBA, needs to be approved by MSBA. So the latest that has been submitted to them on January 15th is this plan here with these costs and a 700-page report that includes our educational plan and a lot of other things. So that's the next step that we go through in this process.
And like you said before, those are all available on the website, and so it's a
Yes.
lot of information.
Yes.
All of the meetings now are being taped on ECAT, so those can be looked at and watched also.
Yes. We've had several meetings so far. We've had school planning committee meetings. We've had school committee meetings on the topic. We've had community forums, staff forums. We had visioning workshops, several visioning workshops that community members could volunteer to participate in. We have an educational leadership team of the administrators that are working together on the educational plan. And on the website, not only can people find the document that I just shared with you, they can also find all of the school planning committee agendas, minutes, recorded meetings, all of the presentations by our owner's project manager and designer are also on there. There are every article that we have seen that is on this project that's been in the press is on there. There's a Q&A of the questions that we're receiving, list of the school planning committee members, if they have a specific question, the project timeline, key dates and next steps. There's also an email that people can write in with questions that they might have that could either turn into a specific answer or one of the frequently asked questions.
So this is probably going to be one of the biggest projects that really impact our community, and it's really important that people do pay attention to this. One of the questions that I get asked a lot is, who decides on the final, configuration? And as the chair, Jane Martin, always says, and I like this phrase, it reveals itself by the process of elimination as we're going through this. And you can see you know, the green versus the red, some things it is just not feasible to do when you get through, and that's why we've already been able to take a couple of them off the list. But that will further, as they get more into this and do the traffic study and so forth, we'll be able to pare this down even further until we are at the actual end result.
So the red is actually the cons against choosing that?
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
So like, for instance, to do an ad reno at the center school, one of the problems is that they're going to lose a softball field. There's inequity, you know, if you did one brand-new school and then the other two were not able to be repaired. The construction, the timing of construction, and the preliminary costs are all on there, detailed.
And these are all of these determinants come from the community. These are the salient points that we were able to harvest from all of their emails and input and participation of things that they said were priorities to them. And so we've noted to reflect that. So really, the entire community those that have wanted to participate are reflected in the priorities that we set and how we're getting to choose a school, getting
Really
through that
important.
process.
And district-wide, I'm betraying some ignorance now, it's been quite a while since my kids were that age, but it is just those two schools, right? Center School and Parkview? Not Moreau?
The two options are a center school that is just for the current center school students,
Yeah,
or a new school for all three elementary schools, Center and Moreau and Parkview.
So townwide.
It would be a town-wide or
townwide.
district-wide
The
school.
district-wide is just these two schools.
Three
No,
schools.
District-wide is our town-wide. It would be for the three
All
current
three
schools.
Okay.
Right.
Center and Parkview and Moreau.
Okay, thanks.
I agree with Dottie. I think this is a critically important project for the town. The number that might seem large for the cost of the repair of the existing three locations at $86,501,000 and change. That actually isn't something that's new, though. If my memory is correct, this actually stems back to amounts that were noted to Doran Whittier that was done years ago, a study, if I recall correctly.
A town-wide report was done through Doran Whittier in 2014 that did all municipal buildings, and so the school buildings were included in that report. A lot of the repairs that are reflected here are from that, escalated for current costs, and including anything that's happened since then.
Right. So this
But they also did their own investigation and arrived at the same numbers as Doran Whittier. They didn't just take their numbers. So it was
Right.
another set of checks and balances
Exactly.
that they saw the same thing that Doran Whittier did. It's just that now the prices have escalated because it's been a few years.
Correct, and importantly, over the last several years, we haven't been able to take enough steps to put a dent in that backlog of the existing repairs and maintenance required at these three schools for this entire grade level.
Right, and of course, that's just repairs. That has nothing to do with the program changes, that there are minimum program requirements, and our three schools do not meet them right now. Even the repairs for $86 million do not address any of the program needs. The configurations on the front, however, all of them meet the program needs.
So what if we're not meeting the programming needs? What are the consequences of that?
Well, for example, we were cited, as we reported earlier in the year, we were cited in our coordinated program review because the spaces that were allocated for things like occupational therapy were considered too small. They were considered too public. We literally had some in the back of the library because we don't have enough space. We have offices and conference rooms in closets. And so when you are cited for certain things, you have a certain amount of days or months to complete that. Otherwise, your federal grants are at risk.
So it seems economically, we have an opportunity with each of these options. They all fall below that 86.5 million of identified repairs and maintenance that doesn't even take care of the programmatic issues. The town has an opportunity to potentially solve those either in part for just center school or even town-wide for less money than the backlogged repairs and maintenance.
Even the most expensive configuration, which is actually one of the ones that the committee has moved away from, which is 77 million, is less expensive and does address the programmatic concerns, correct?
There was some, sorry for jumping around a little bit, there was appropriately so some concern from the town residents about the traffic, and I'm heartened to hear that we'll be doing an in-depth study. Will there be an opportunity for the town residents to engage during that study process to provide some feedback to the people that are doing that?
Yes, we're actually encouraging that input now. So the website is one opportunity. Also, all the school planning committee meetings are listed on there, and they're all open to the public. And we encourage people to come if they have questions or anything that they would like addressed, and we have had participation.
Great.
To this point, it wasn't economically advantageous to pursue such a study for 2 different sites. Now that we've been able to narrow it down to, well, we still have the 2 sites, but the center school site isn't as much of an enigma. But since we've been able to narrow it down to the fact that the Parkview site really could use some further investigation, now's the perfect opportunity to do that more in-depth study. We expect that to be done by the 2nd week of February.
Given the magnitude of this opportunity, is there a communication plan that will engage the community to help them understand some of the comparisons we've made tonight, both from a financial perspective and from a programmatic perspective? Is there going to be a comprehensive reach-out communication to help the town get engaged and understand this important issue?
Yes, we have been sending flyers. We've been attending things such as the NRT Fair, the Winter Festival, trying to reach out in any way that we can. We also, as I said, have the website. We really encourage people to take a look at that. It's the best source of information at this point. And our OPM, or our project manager and designer, are putting together additional community forums for people to ask more information, and of course the school planning committee meetings as well.
Having been on the committee at a certain point, I can tell you that for anybody that could in some way understand what you're articulating about the programmatic challenges, I had the good fortune of taking a tour, and that was really impactful to me, to actually see the physical space that you were kind of talking about in terms of open space of programmatic. If there was a way to give people that visual experience that I had the benefit of having, I think that would be very impactful and would add a tremendous amount of value to make it real for people who might hear the words but not see it.
Can I just jump in?
You have
Please.
to come to the microphone, though.
Maybe you're about to say this, just in case. So, Jane Martin, School Planning Committee. So we have actually already reached out to ECAT for an opportunity to make a video that would actually, part of it would do exactly what you've just discussed.
Awesome.
Kind of a tour of some of the schools, what are some of the challenges, and then to further go along and explain some highlights of what the MSBA is like, how the project has progressed, where we are, where we think we're going.
Awesome.
And so ECAT has been open to that idea and opportunity, and actually Dr. Cabral suggested it would be a great opportunity for some of the students at the high school in the media programs to join and participate with that as well.
Fantastic, thank you. It's a great idea.
You know, I get the sense that we're trying to sell this, but I don't think that you're going to have any problem getting buy-in with the community. I mean, for me, I think that the district-wide school at Parkview only makes sense. I mean, you have the whole compound there. You get the police department there. I mean, you're dealing with 3 outdated buildings that are extremely expensive to maintain. The center school location, the traffic is a nightmare. I travel in and out of there on a regular basis. Putting the neighbors aside, I'm sure we have to work through that. But I mean, it seems like the Parkview location is a natural fit for a brand new school that will host all the kids.
It certainly is one of the 4 remaining, as I said. We still have a few more steps before we can make that kind of a determination, like the traffic study.
Yeah.
If for some reason they came back and said that it would be a tremendous hardship, then that would certainly weigh into the decision. I wish it were as easy as just choosing one, but there is a great deal of detail that we have to explore first. And maybe some people feel very strongly about 1 or 2 of them. We're just going to continue vetting all of them, and we'll definitely be reporting out what the results of the traffic study are and further decisions of the school planning committee. Again, they're televised and they're also on the website, so people can follow
I think that's important. I mean, will impact people and what
Absolutely.
they pay. So I think it's very important we take the time to do it right. Appreciate the MSBA has such a thorough process and keeps us honest to that. Not that we wouldn't do it on our own, but I think it's important, and the more we can educate people and help them understand the reason why we're doing it and the return that we'll get from this as a community, I appreciate you folks making that effort to get that point across.
We understand that it's very important to be as transparent as possible. We take the onus of responsibility for making a recommendation that we know has a significant effect on taxpayers' contribution, and so we're giving them all the information we have, and we certainly, if there are more questions, we definitely want to know about them, because if we don't know the answers, it's very important to us that we are able to provide those answers.
And we've had some participation in the meetings and the work groups that we had some participation, but I have to say, I'm really surprised that for something like this, that we don't have more people asking questions and sending things in, and there's still people that don't realize that we have this project going on, and that's really going to be a big challenge, because we're going to have to vote on this townwide. And we need to make sure that if there's questions or big concerns, we need to be addressing those now while we're still in these stages. So I'd really encourage people to go to the website, send your questions in using that email, talk to your neighbors, find out what are some of the things that are important to you about this project, and really come forward, because we like that feedback. All the boards and committees
Absolutely.
appreciate that. So.
We're trying to serve the needs and the wishes of the community, and so knowing what those are very important.
Awesome.
Would you repeat
Dottie, if
that website
Yes.
link, please?
Yes.
EES project?
Easton, EES for Easton Elementary School. Easton, EES project.com. If anyone forgets it or can't find it, they can simply email me. We'll direct them. They can email anyone at the central office. They can come in, stop by. I'm sure it will be in the newspaper.
Great.
And just a quick note, as far as timing for the remainder of this phase of the project, we're talking about how important it is that folks get engaged and get involved now, because this is a really consequential decision for the town. What are we talking about as far as timing? We're looking at possibly having votes on this year, correct?
The current timeline has us going for a debt exclusion override on one design in November of 2019.
10 months. So it's certainly important for folks to be participating if they wish to now.
And if that doesn't pass, it takes about 10 years to get on this list and approved. We've been trying for the elementary schools for a number of years now. We've invested up to $1 million on the feasibility of this whole process. So if this doesn't pass at town meeting, not only did we just throw away $1 million, but we also threw away the opportunity for, at least, they're not going to come back and say, well, we'll see how Easton feels the next year. It's going to be at least another, possibly 10 years before we're at bat again to even talk to them about it under consideration. And in that 10 years, all the pricing escalates, and then you have 10 more years with schools. We wouldn't be able to, I can't imagine us taking out a debt exclusion override to repair those schools with no improvements and no educational improvements. So we would be putting another 10 years on those schools that already aren't meeting the needs. So it's really, really important. Some towns do go through this process, and at the end, their towns don't vote for the debt exclusion, and it's really not good when that happens. So.
It's not a good use of the money that's already been dedicated to this, for sure. I will say that if there's an expectation of something other than a community forum coming, this is where all the information is. We are well into the process. It did not just start. And so the information is already out there. People should be looking at it right now. They shouldn't be delayed.
Okay. All right. Then that leads into the contract amendment for Perkins Eastman for the traffic engineering services. The original contract included some base numbers, but because we wanted to go into the deeper dive on this part of the traffic study for the Parkview site, there is an addendum that we'll vote change.
That's right. So in your packet, there is a memo from Perkins Eastman regarding the First Amendment to their existing contract with the town for this project that Dr. Cabral just provided an overview on. Dottie, as you alluded to, this existing contract had a value of $552,000. The amendment proposed for $55,000 will be for a detailed traffic engineering study. Again, as Dr. Cabral just summarized, in the area of the Oliver Ames High School campus, where this one of the possible configurations could be located. Before moving the project along any further, getting that detailed information is obviously very important to the town and to the community. So this would bring the total contract with Perkins Eastman to $607,000. It would still be well within the $1 million that was appropriated by town meeting of Avalon mitigation funds for this project, and I recommend your award of this amendment.
Would somebody like to make a motion to award amendment number 1 in the amount of $55,000?
So moved.
Second.
That's Tom and Craig. All in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Dr.
much. We
Brown.
appreciate you coming in to
Dr.
give us
Brown.
that
If you have
update
any
tonight.
questions,
Wow.
please don't hesitate to reach out.
Will do.
Thank you, Jane, for coming in too. Next would be the acceptance of the conservation restriction for Deborah Lee Lane.
Sure. So I believe the Assistant Planning Director, Andrea Langhauser, is here to speak to this item. There's a request from the Conservation Commission for the acceptance of a restriction on Deborah Lee Lane. Andrea, if you would like to speak to that, please.
Sure. There's a 4-lot subdivision that was approved by the Planning Board in April of 2016. Conservation Commission approved those portions of the road and house lots within their jurisdiction at the same time, and required as a condition of the decision that this conservation restriction be recorded against the property. It is just over 3/4 of an acre. It will remain in private property, but there'll be a deed restriction on Lot 3 and 4 to make sure this portion of the land stays in its natural state in perpetuity. The reason for the conservation restriction, besides the fact that it was a condition, is because it's wildlife habitat for a certified vernal pool, which is one of the more sensitive wildlife habitats we have in town.
Okay, any questions? No? Okay. I will entertain a motion to accept the conservation restriction at 39 Deborah Lee Lane.
So moved.
Second.
So that is Craig and then Tom? All in favor? Unanimous. Great, thank you,
Thank you
Andrea.
very much.
Thank you.
And the discussion and vote to establish a committee charge for the Easton Shoveltown Cultural District Management Partners Team.
Good evening. I'm Stephanie Danielson, the Director of Planning and Economic Development.
I'm Carolyn Cole. I'm the chair of the Easton Shoveltown Cultural District and a resident of Easton at 39 Caroline Road.
You want to give us a little bit of background on the district for people that aren't familiar with that, and then talk about the district management?
So, yes, I'll let you describe what the district is.
Well, the district was developed from a law that was established by Duval Patrick, which allowed the cities and towns to develop a walkable area. The idea of it was to bring activities, arts and culture, science, humanities into the area, but ultimately to stabilize the economy. And we've had great success since we've started in bringing a lot of activities and exciting other groups to join with us. And that's what we're trying to accomplish, is a connection with all the area. And to really, I think it enhances the real estate value of the town. It enhances the livability. We have a beautiful town, and so many assets that people don't even know about, and we're hoping to bring attention to that.
Great.
So when a town establishes a cultural district and it receives that designation from the state, it's expected that the municipality will provide some oversight to a management partnership team. Then Carolyn has been talking for a while, since the designation was granted in 2017, about formalizing that management team. She has very effectively managed the partnership portion of that team. It's comprised of people from the district, from arts, from different civic organizations that are relevant to a cultural district. And she oversees a group that provides the programming that the district offers. However, to have an ongoing management team and ensure continuity and that there's no long-term interruption of participation on the management team, what we're proposing and recommending is that that management partnership team be a designated, an appointed board by the Board of Selectmen. And what you have in front of you tonight is a resolution that proposes establishing that board and includes a charter for the board.
So one of the things that I just want to let people know is that there's only, like 25 or maybe a little bit more than that now, cultural districts that are designated in the state. It's very hard to achieve that designation. You have to put a lot of work into it. There's a lot of a lot of documentation. Caroline worked on this tirelessly and did a fantastic job. So I know of other cities that have the designation, but then they start to, it just goes by the wayside because they don't have that sustainability of a group of people that are managing it. And the problem is that when you have one person, if they ever want to retire or something happens, you can't put a whole project like this just on one person. So you need a team to spread out the responsibilities of it. And I know other places where they're in danger of losing their whole cultural district that you work so hard to get because they don't have that continuity plan. So I think it's great that we're at that point. And I just want to thank you again, Carolyn, for all the hard work that you've done. This is not just, of course it brings arts and culture, but it's a real economic development driver for the town. And I know that a lot of the events that the district has, that there's a lot of thought involved to either have them be no cost or low cost. And that's really important that, the whole community is able to access these events. So thank you for that.
And I think you brought up some very good points, Dottie, in that, one, you have to be redesignated every 5 years, so you have to go through a process of reporting out and informing the Cultural Council what you've done, how you've met the goals, and followed the guidelines. So again, that reinforces the need. And we did reach out to other communities to find out how they were doing with their management structure. And they were struggling. In some instances, they had the Chamber of Commerce or a business improvement district manager who was overseeing it, but that wasn't really their full-time day job. And after a lot of conversation and making suggestions, this seemed to be a real viable approach for the town, where it keeps a level of involvement, but it also allows the management partnership to maintain some autonomy.
May I add to that too? I think it's important to, have the community involved when you're dealing with creative activities, and the businesses are active, and the local organizations. We try never to ask for donations from small business, and we try to rely on grants and donations. But my biggest fear is, as Dottie and
Stephanie have said is that, you know, after all this work, if we don't have something solid to carry on, it will fall apart.
Any questions or comments on the district?
I just want to myself recognize Carolyn for the work you've been doing with the cultural district. I know it's something we've been talking about for a very long time to formalize this, and it's something that's a priority, I know, for me and for the board to make sure that we have kind of strong organizational bones for long-term planning. As fantastic as you've been, I think someone on the finance committee might have told me once that individual heroism is not necessarily a substitute for long-term planning. So us formalizing this is not a slight at how excellent you've been. It's to keep that moving and respect it and keep the good work going. So thank you for working with us on that and for all you do for the community.
You're welcome.
Can you speak a little bit to the process for membership, so that the people at home can understand exactly what
Sure. So tonight, one of the things that the selectmen are being asked to do is to adopt the charge that's proposed in your packet, which will outline the membership for this, but it will be treated as a volunteer board or committee that the selectmen would receive applications for and coordinate with Carolyn on the appointment of members of the community who wish to serve on this management partnership team. One of the key pieces here, and Stephanie alluded to this, other communities have leaned on chambers of commerce or other 501c3 type organizations to handle this. This is work. There's an administrative aspect to it. So I've been speaking with Mike and Stephanie about this, and we haven't picked exactly who, but one of the leaders from the town's administrative team will be assigned to this committee as well to help support it and provide some fiscal oversight, because that's an important function as well, to add that kind of ongoing professionalism and keep it moving. So.
Do you want me to just go through the composition of the board?
Sure.
So it's proposed to be a 9-person board to be appointed by the Board of Selectmen, consisting of at least 5 town residents and including the following representation, which would be 2 or more artists or musicians that live or work in the proposed district, a nonprofit cultural organization incorporated in Massachusetts, such as the Ames Free Library, the YMCA Children's Museum, and most of these organizations have been involved since the inception. A for-profit creative business, such as a gallery, a dance studio, local business and or chamber of commerce, other such interested town residents, and the town representative that Connor referenced as ex officio. And what we're proposing is that the chair be appointed by the Board of Selectmen. Again, that's to ensure you have a very strong leader in that role, like Carolyn has been over the past, it's been at least 7 years, I think.
Yeah,
that Carolyn's been involved with this. And then that that appointment be run concurrent with the 5-year renewal period. So you would have your chair their term would run up to the next designation. And then all other appointments would be for 3 years, with the first set of appointments being on a rotating basis. So you'd have the first would be 3 members for a 3-year term, then 3 for a 2-year, and 2 for a 1-year term. So then they're constantly rotating. One of the things Carolyn wanted to ensure too was that consideration be given when reappointment is sought, that if someone who has been participating on the team and wishes to continue, that they be given a preference, because again, that continuity is really important to how the team functions going forward.
Okay. So if we got the designation in 2017, the 5 years would be, we'd have 3 more years left in that. So does that mean that the chair would be appointed for 3 years?
I would suggest that I would be willing to, obviously chair it for the end of the period. I would suggest that it would be kind of stated from 2017 for the 5-year period.
Okay.
To me, that would make sense.
So it'd be like a look-back appointment the first year for the chair?
Okay. Oh, yeah, all right.
But it, you know, it would be up, I don't think it matters, but I'm just wanting to throw it out that I am willing. It's not that I want to walk away at this point.
Oh, okay.
You
No,
know,
I was hoping
I want to
that.
like retrain some, you know, I want to retrain somebody to get into that position.
Sure.
And we do have others who have been working right along with us who are willing to accept an appointment too.
Okay.
You know, so.
All right, great. So we will advertise this.
Yes, I would just ask the board to take a vote to establish the Shoveltown, I'm sorry, my notes have escaped me. The
Management partnership.
Easton Shoveltown Cultural District Management Partners Team. We're competing with 524 Depot Street for the longest here, so.
And this is like a 3-page document, so that rather than read it, people should know that this will be on the website.
That's right.
And
We'll-
it is in our packet.
Sure,
that
and
you
we'll
can look at.
include the charge of this team with the solicitation for volunteers when we put it online.
Okay, great. Would somebody like to make a motion to accept this
So moved.
agreement?
Second that.
Craig and then Tom, any questions? All in favor?
Great
Unanimous.
idea.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again. And Stephanie, thanks for your work on this, too. And so now we just have the town administrator's presentation for the summary report of financial condition.
Just need one moment. Okay. Good evening. Thank you for being with me. Tonight I'm happy to present to the Selectmen and the folks at home the first public presentation as part of the upcoming fiscal year 2020 budget process. And the topic of tonight's presentation will be the recently issued summary report of financial condition. Just a little bit of context. I don't expect anyone to read every single bullet up there. This is, by way of background, this report, the summary report of financial condition, is taking place within the broader annual budget process. On the screen above, you see the roadmap and major milestones for that cyclical annual budgeting process, which begins in the fall of each year. In this case, in November of 2018, I issued my preliminary departmental budget memo to all the town departments requesting their operating and capital budgets for the coming fiscal year. And as you can see from the helpful bright yellow arrow where we are tonight, is the summary report of financial condition. Shortly after this, anything you see in green up there, those are all public presentations that will occur at various times between now and the final adoption of a balanced budget at town meeting in May. So next week, I'll be reviewing a benchmarking comparison report of the town's expenditures and operations with the budget subcommittee. I will then bring a presentation of that same document to the board in 2 weeks, along with the presentation of the town's preliminary operating budget for fiscal 20. And really the intent here is to provide as much quality information to the Selectmen, Finance Committee, School Committee, and members of the public to inform our deliberations during this budget process. So the purpose of this report, this is not the first time the town has had a summary report of its financial condition issued. It is the first time in my tenure as town administrator. It's the first of what will become an annual report. This is something that, working with the Selectmen, I put in my goals for this year, and it's something that we'll continue doing, working together moving forward. And as I mentioned before, the intent of this report and presentation is to provide quality information to folks involved in the budget process to inform our deliberations. And the information in this report is not just numbers that I thought sounded good and fit these graphs. It's sourced from publicly available information from the Department of Revenue, the Massachusetts Taxpayers Foundation, PARAC, which is the Massachusetts Public Employees Retirement Administration Commission, sorry, and as well as some information from the Federal Bureau of Labor Statistics. So in order to accomplish that goal of providing quality information to budgetary decision makers, we analyze some key fiscal health metrics in this report. We look at revenue and expenditures. We look at the state of taxation in town, both new growth and any overrides that have happened in the past. We look at state aid, local receipts, our reserves, both use in the operating budget and reserves as a position of financial strength. This also looks at some long-term financial indicators such as our debt, our pension liability, and for the first time this report also includes analysis of what's called OPEB liability. That stands for Other Post-Employment Benefit Liability. That's a really unnecessarily complicated way of saying retiree health care, mostly. And the types of data analyzed of this are informed by the town's existing fiscal policies and best management practices, including the fund balance policy adopted by the town in November of 2015, as well as the financial management guidelines adopted by this board in 2016. And just to take a step back before moving forward, as I alluded to, this is not the first time this report has ever been done in town, but it's been many years since the last one. The last report was issued in April of 2016. That was analyzing the fiscal year 2015 year-end budget. That report cautioned that the town must be careful to balance its operating and capital needs with the need to maintain financial discipline, and further that balancing each successive budget since the Great Recession has gotten increasingly difficult. The town will need to continue to brace for the impact of stagnating revenues. And since that last report was issued, quite a lot has happened relating to the town's financial management. And this is not an exhaustive list, but it's just kind of a highlight reel of what's happened since the spring of 2016. In the spring of 2016, the Selectmen, Finance Committee, and School Committee recommended a $4.4 million operating override to town meeting. Town meeting went on to adopt that override contingent budget that May. However, voters the following month in 2016 rejected that proposed override at the ballot box. In August of that year, the Selectmen adopted a series of financial management guidelines, which in part inform this analysis. In September of that same year, the Board of Selectmen awarded a contract for an operational audit of some of the town's management practices, which was concluded the following spring. In May of 2017, annual town meeting adopted an operating budget that partially implemented those financial management guidelines, particularly as it pertains to the use of free cash and reserve funds in our operating budget. In November of 17, a special town meeting added $600,000 to our stabilization fund. The following town meeting in May, we adopted our first budget which fully implemented those financial management guidelines, reducing our reliance on reserves to fund the operating budget. And as recently as October of 18, special town meeting again added to our stabilization fund $522,000, and we reached the highest point of the stabilization fund in the past decade. So this report looks at a variety of different revenue uses. Despite revenue challenges that are very familiar to the Selectmen, we've talked about them every budget year, we finished the most recent fiscal year, which was 2018, in the black. And we had a certified free cash balance at the end of that year of $2,089,000. And so free cash is a combination of both collections that exceeded your forecasted revenue collections, as well as turnbacks from departments or other operating budgets that came in underneath what you projected those expenditures to be. So while generation of over $2 million of free cash is a good thing, it is lower than the free cash generated in fiscal years 16 and 17, which were at just shy of 2.7 and 2.4 million respectively. New growth was a major bright spot in the fiscal year 2018 budget. It came in at $1,211, which is more than $300,000 in excess of what we projected it at. That obviously added more than $300,000 additional dollars to our revenue picture, and as with any new growth, added to the tax levy permanently, and brought the total tax levy up to in excess of $54 million.
Connor, was that related to one larger project that created that?
So, not all of it, but Avalon Bay's project was partially captured. The new growth of that was partially captured in fiscal year 2018. The total new taxable growth from that project is somewhere in the area of $560,000. So that is a significant contributor to that $1 million.
Would it have still been higher than the $700,000 without that particular portion of it? Apologies for asking that question now.
I don't know if I know that off the top of my head.
Understood.
But if you cut that 560 in half, that gives you 280. You would have been in the ballpark.
Pretty close. Fair enough.
But we can get an exact breakdown on that for you if you'd like.
Thank you.
So on the TV and for folks at home, these are just two tables. I buried the lead a little bit. I should have indicated that this report is online, both in the Selectmen's packet, which is online, but it will also get put on the town's finance page so that anyone can look at it. All the tables, everything in here is pulled straight out of the report for anyone's consumption. So what we have here is both the new growth and the tax levy history in the past 10 years relating to the topics I just touched on. And as you can see, fiscal year 2018 was a strong year for new growth. It was the highest we've had in that past decade. State aid. State aid is the second largest source of revenue for the town of Easton. It's a critically important piece of our revenue pie. It remains the second largest source of our revenue, but in the 10 years that we're talking about here, it has dropped from about 23% of our total revenue to 17% of our revenue in fiscal year 2018 due to numerous cuts that occurred during the recession years, fiscal 9 through 12 in particular, and then very modest increases to that state aid after being cut. Before the recession era cuts in fiscal year 2008, state aid to Easton was just shy of $12 million. Following years of successive cuts, it was down to $11.28 million in fiscal 2012. And that account, state aid, only recovered to its 2008 peak in fiscal 16. So we lost 8 years of time there. And in those 8 years, not adjusting for inflation, not adjusting for any kind of increase in costs, we effectively recovered to and only received a 0.85% increase in this critical revenue source over the course of 8 years. Just for illustrative purposes, had state aid kept pace with inflation from its 2008 level, it would have been over $13.5 million rather than barely over 12 in fiscal 16.
That's huge.
It is, and there are other factors that contribute to our existing structural revenue deficit, but this is a large driver there. As you may recall, the most recent budget we used, I believe, $1.2 million in free cash to close the operating budget, and we're talking about a loss of more than that, at least using an inflation metric in those 8 years. So the table above illustrates one of the major contributors to our ongoing revenue deficit. Those cuts between 2009 and 12 were mitigated and continue to be mitigated through a use of free cash, but they also, particularly during the worst years of a recession, those challenges were mitigated by relying on the town's reserve fund, the stabilization fund that had been built up quite significantly with the last operational override that was passed in 2007, which is actually so long ago now it's falling off all of our kind of look back decade charts. as painful as it was and continues to be for the town to continue to balance our budget with that revenue deficit, the layoffs, and there were still layoffs even with the override contribution to the stabilization fund. Had that not occurred, the layoffs would have been devastating to our services after that recession. And so since that time, we have been relying on our reserve funds, which is a mixture of free cash and stabilization funds, to close that revenue deficit. One area that has performed well in this same 10-year time frame that we're talking about is local receipts. Local receipts are things like ambulance receipts, local meals tax, excise tax, permit fees, and things of that nature. Growth in this revenue category has been supported by additional ambulance revenue, which has been made possible through provision of additional ambulance service. Building permits have generated significant revenue in this area, and general economic recovery since the recession has helped drive growth in this area. An area that usually tracks pretty closely to the overall economy is excise tax collections. When the economy is doing a little bit better, people are feeling a little bit better, they buy nicer cars, they buy more cars, which makes our treasurer collector very happy. Fiscal year 2018, however, showed this revenue category leveling off, which is actually something that for many, many, many years, Wendy and I have been putting budget presentations together and saying, yay, local receipts are doing great. However, they will eventually level off. And it looks like fiscal 2018 was that year. As you can see, we actually had to decrease, we had to adjust that budget downward from its projection, largely driven by a fall off in building permit revenues, which can be tied to the delta between 17 and 18 is largely attributable to what Tom referenced earlier, a single large project. We had significant building permit revenue coming in during fiscal 17 for Avalon, which obviously is a non-recurring revenue. So this is in line with what our expectations have been, that eventually we will not see 5, 7, 8, 9% increases in this revenue category every year, as fantastic as that has been. And we anticipate that it will begin to level off. And that will present challenges as we only have so many different revenue sources to pull from. Excuse me. Free cash. So there's two different portions here. One is what the actual free cash balances are and its use in the operating budget. So free cash balances have been relatively steady with the exception of 2009. That was a particularly challenging year financially. There was cuts to state aid to the town halfway through the fiscal year, which anyone who's involved in organizational finance knows that having a major source of revenue change halfway through the year is very destabilizing. And so free cash was relied on tremendously in that year. So accepting that year, free cash has been relatively stable in this 10-year period. You're generally looking between $1.5 and $2.5 million. It peaked in 2016 and has decreased since. And that's basically, there's many variables there, but it's a function of narrowing budget surpluses that are basically being driven by, there's only so many times you can sharpen your pencil. We have incremental budgets that deliver largely level services every single year with fixed costs driving a majority of those budget increases and constraints on the revenue we can generate. So every year you sharpen your pencil and look back of a budget and figure out what areas you can adjust on the margins. You get some big wins along the way, like healthcare reform, to save some money. But as time goes on, those margins narrow and those opportunities to generate significant free cash narrow. And you're starting to see that with the dropping of free cash balances from 16, 17, and through 18. As I've mentioned multiple times already, we've had this structural revenue deficit for years. The town has been mitigating it through successive operating budgets, through use of free cash and occasionally stabilization funds. That is not a best practice that we want to be doing. We are working hard to limit this practice and wean ourselves off of those one-time monies in the operating budget, and we've made meaningful progress in that area. However, absent a new source of revenue, that's going to continue even as we whittle away from it. And when we do appropriate those dollars to operating funds, that's less money that can be used for one-time capital expenses, which would be preferable. So reserve position, the town has a fund balance policy that was established in 2015 that lays out certain key metrics to look at to make a judgment about the health of our reserve position. And when I say reserve position, you can look at that a few different ways, and some reports in the past have looked at it in a few different ways. But since we're largely focusing on the operating side of the house, this is calculated looking at our operating reserves, and for that I'm talking about free cash and the stabilization fund. We have some more specific stabilization funds. We have a sewer stabilization fund, and we have a capital stabilization fund. As those names indicate, they have very specific purposes, and while town meeting could appropriate that money, they were not put there with the intent of going towards the operating budget. So they're not calculated as part of this calculation of reserve position. So our ongoing reliance on reserve funds challenges our ability to build our reserve position, which dropped by 1/100% between fiscal 17 and 18. There's a variety of influencers that lead to that, but one of the largest drivers is that free cash in fiscal 18 was approximately $400,000 fewer dollars than 17. And we arrive at this reserve position, this funded ratio, by looking at what our free cash and stabilization funds are as a percentage of our operating expenditures. So the goal of the fund balance policy, it's an aspirational policy. The goal is to get to 10% of our operating expenditures. We have not ever been at 10%. So our position below 10% is not indicative that we have been moving in the opposite direction. In fact, the inverse is true. The last time we had one of these reports, our relevant reserves on hand were 4 3/4%, and we're at 5.61. So we've made positive progress. We've prioritized building reserves. So this report is the most recently concluded fiscal year. So this is looking at numbers as of June 30th, 2018. We know, being in the moment, since then we've added more money to the stabilization account. And we actually in fiscal 18 and 19 added over 1.1 million additional dollars to the stabilization fund in the fiscal 19 budget, which again, that'll be reviewed in its totality after that year closes. But we do know that the fiscal 19 operating budget used fewer free cash dollars than any budget in 5 years, and it used 0 stabilization funds for the first time in many years. So we're moving in the right direction, but it's a challenge. So looking out to some longer term financial considerations, which are equally important. This report also looks at debt, as far as our outstanding debt from our capital borrowing, looks at pension liability, and for the first time also it takes a look at what's called the other post-employment benefit liability. So debt per capita, and I will actually just skip right to the tables here. Debt per capita in Easton, so if you look at what our long-term outstanding debt is divided by our population, is actually on the lower end of the distribution. If you look at that table on the left side of the screen, that is a collection of our comparable, our benchmark communities as identified by the operational audit, as well as some of our contiguous neighbors, just so we get a feel of what's going on in the neighborhood. And so our debt per capita is actually on the lower end of that spectrum. We have a strong bond rating of a AA3. That's a bond rating that was reaffirmed in August of last year. And among many factors that Moody's cites with continuing to preserve that bond rating is the town's conservative financial management and adherence to some of these best practices and adoption of these very prescriptive, formal financial management policies. Our pensions, so employees in the town of Easton, this is accepting school, the teachers who are in their own pension pool. Pensions are managed by the Bristol County Retirement System. That's a county-wide municipal pension system. Currently has a funded ratio of 67.7% and is on track for full funding by 2028. Municipal employees have defined benefit pension plans for retirement where they are paid a certain percentage of an aggregate average of their salary based on years of service, and they contribute a portion of their weekly pay in lieu of Social Security. They pay directly into a pension system. And so on the right here, you have a handful of other retirement systems in the area, as well as the state of Massachusetts pension system, to see the funded ratio, the investment return assumption, and the planned funding schedule. And you can see that Bristol County is actually, with the exception of the city of Taunton, ahead. We're looking at 2028 seems, it's one of those years, it sounds really far away, but we're talking about, this is happening under the discussion about the fiscal 20 budget. So that's really rather close. And this is a good thing. If you look at the operating budget every single year in our employee benefits and insurance, you'll see an assessment, a county retirement assessment each year that is quite sizable, that is contributing, as are all municipalities in these pension pools, in addition to the employee wages that come out of everyone's paycheck. The employer is contributing an amount towards that full funding that's getting more and more aggressive to attempt to make sure that that full funded ratio is reached in that year. And in theory, when that is reached, the assessment, which is at about $4.5 million, goes away, because at that point it's self-sustaining. If I'm still here in fiscal 28, ask me if that happened, but that is the goal. Other post-employment benefits. So OPEB liability refers to future estimated financial liabilities for the town's share of retiree health insurance premiums for active employees who are not yet retired today, who will one day retire. I wish I had a more succinct way to say that. But basically, it's an actuarial study of the future estimated costs of the town's portion of health insurance that we will pay in the future, both for retirees who are retired now and for people who are not retiring for quite a long time, like me. The town, it's really important to delineate that this is a liability, but it's not a liability in the sense that we have an unmet obligation. The town funds fully its portion of retiree health insurance every year in our operating budget. So to say that there is an existing OPEB liability is not to say that there is an unfunded obligation in a year that we're failing to meet. This is a large number for every municipality in the state. So as time goes on, retiree health premiums grow, as premiums for almost all of us grow, and the amount of retirees also grows. People are living longer, they're living healthier lives. And when somebody retires, if they are vested and eligible for health insurance, they are often replaced by an active employee who many times takes health insurance. So that pool continues to grow. The most recent actuarial analysis quantifies that OPEB liability at $118 million. So that is million, not thousand. The town established an OPEB trust fund in 2013 to begin allocating available funds if and when possible. And that balance is currently at $113,000, just shy of $114,000. So again, that's obviously a drop in the bucket towards that full actuarial liability. But that is a number that is representative of kind of a longitudinal assumption of all of those costs that we currently are meeting year to year. Nonetheless, it's a significant challenge, and it's one that we have to plan for and one that we have to be aware of. This is a challenge throughout the state. There are some communities that are looking to the legislature to say there needs to be some kind of reform here because these numbers are just so gargantuan. We're having conversations about trying to close the structural revenue deficit to keep a service that's in place right now in service. How can you also have the conversation about an actuarial liability out into the future? Nonetheless, that doesn't change the fact that we need to be thinking about it. And so we have been working on that. And this year, the town made, I think, some major headway on that. We've, so far, with the 5 collective bargaining units that the town has ratified agreements for 19, 20, and 21, all 5 of those town units have been really great to work with and have come to the table to realize that this is a shared challenge and a shared problem for us to work on, and have agreed to policies in these contracts that lay out a framework for an employee contribution to that trust fund on a permanent and ongoing basis once all labor groups agree to a similar deduction so that it's equitable. You wouldn't want one group contributing to a trust fund for all future retirees until everyone contributes. So it's something we're working towards. So far, all of the town unions, to their credit, looked at this and said, hey, you're right. We're funding it this year, but that's a future liability for the community. It's a future liability for retirees. And we've started to make that significant progress. So again, I don't want to be misleading. That doesn't mean that there is a contribution from employee wages happening this year, but it nonetheless is a really meaningful first step in laying the groundwork for a sustainable contribution to that trust fund in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I've outlined in this report, the town faces a variety of challenges in its mission to provide, preserve, and provide quality services to the public. We have rising fixed costs. We have long-term financial liabilities that we are attempting to do our absolute best to get our arms around. We are purposefully and deliberately reducing our own use of reserve funds, which, as much as that is a good goal to strive towards, it is nonetheless a self-inflicted cut in our revenue that is already not growing sufficiently. And this is coupled with unfunded mandates in the areas of stormwater management. Dr. Cabral referenced being cited by DESE earlier. There are requirements from larger governments, state and federal government, that grow almost every year. They usually don't shrink, that usually do not come with any money attached to them, that we're nonetheless responsible for administering and handling. You couple this with stagnant state aid and a decade-plus structural revenue deficit, and you have some real large challenges to think about as a community and an organization. However, not to leave the presentation on a completely glum note about how hard things are and we should get up and walk out. These are challenges that are persistent. They've been here for a long time, and they're not standing unopposed. And the town and the schools and the community have taken a lot of significant action to meet them over the years. We adopted municipal health insurance reform and joined the GIC years ago. Since we did that, we have seen our healthcare premiums increase an average of about 1% a year, which for any of us who have insurance through a private employer, that's quite good. Mm-hmm. That's not only good for the employee, but that's very, very, very beneficial for the town when it comes to balancing our budget for such a large item. We've reorganized municipal departments to do more with less during the fiscal 19 budget process, which feels like yesterday and was apparently a year ago. I highlighted the Department of Health and Community Services. That's a department we have here in town that has veteran services, recreation, health, and council on aging, that even going into fiscal year 19, after reorganizing and bringing them under one umbrella because of their shared mission, was spending fewer dollars to deliver improved services than they were in 2015 when they were 4 separate departments. We have rebuilt our stabilization fund to the strongest position that it has been in a decade. It's just shy of $2.7 million. We've been adhering to that provision of the financial management guidelines strictly, that at least a quarter of our free cash each year is going into that account, because we understand how critically important it is, because we know through our own history that eventually the economy does turn downward, hopefully not as severe as the last time, but it will eventually happen again. And when it does, we're going to need to have those stabilization funds there to try to preserve our service delivery. We've cut our use of free cash in the operating budget. In the most recent budget, we cut that use of free cash to the lowest it's been in 5 years. I'm particularly proud of, I know the board is, of how hard our department heads work to secure grant funding. We do not have grant writers in Easton. We simply just ask and expect our department heads, in addition to managing their agency, to go out and get that money too. And they're very successful. One of them is in a room right now, at least, who was successful in securing the SAFER grant to bring 4 firefighters to Easton for the cost of 1, with the other 3 being footed by the federal government. As I just alluded to, we've established a policy framework with some of our labor groups to begin laying out a meaningful, sustainable plan for funding OPEB into the future. We've preserved our bond rating through conservative and professional management of the town's finances. We've cut employee wage growth. I'm not saying that in a sense to say we have cut salaries, because that's not generally a good management practice, but we have reduced the rate at which salaries grow. It's important to attract high-quality, talented people, particularly in a town like Easton that's lean in its staffing. You need good people when you don't have many. But we've reduced wage scale growth in the non-union pay plan, in the professional admin pay plan, in the clerical union pay plan. We've cut the steps in between the performance increases from 4% to 2%. The 5 unions that I just referenced also coming to the table to fund OPEB, to their credit, also all agreed to fewer cost of living adjustments in the next 3 years than they have in many, many years. Many of them took 0 base wage increase in this fiscal year. So we've been working with employees and being very aggressive with that to try and promote the sustainability of our expenditures. And we've adopted a tremendous amount of zoning reform and have invested significantly in infrastructure, particularly sewer, with very limited additional staff to take these projects on, to promote economic growth in the areas where it makes sense to try to build up our tax base in a sustainable way. So we are working on it, and I think aggressively, and we will continue to. So with that, I appreciate you indulging me and giving me the time to present this report to the selectmen and the public, and look forward to continuing working with you to take these challenges on. Be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you. Tom, I'm sure you have a whole list going over there.
So I am giddy to dive in, but I will be as succinct as possible for my fellow select people who may not be as excited and enthusiastic as I am. I won't say much. I would just say I feel like this is, first of all, an awesome time, very well put together, Connor. But I think it's a very important time for you to be presenting this, because I think it helps us as a community and certainly as a select board begin to engage on the challenges we face from a budget perspective. There were some things in here that in my professional capacity, as well as a select person, would really cause me to have some further thoughts. So a couple things in terms of seeing, and I believe you referenced it as economic recovery regarding local receipts. I would also put new growth in that same category of a trajectory that can be highly influenced by the economy at large.
Yes.
That can be highly influenced by the cost of capital. So as interest rates rise and as it becomes more expensive to do new projects to get the return on investment that many companies would seek to get, that becomes a challenge. And if you look at, I think a great example is 2008 to 2009, new growth went from $621,000 cut in half to $372,000. And then it took very impressive growth after 3 years of stagnation to arrive at where we were in 2018 of $1 million. And I would argue that probably the steady state is the 2017 and 16, which is close to 700,000 to 800,000. So when you're at a peak in terms of that new growth, it's a consideration that says if we do turn the economy, that's an area that will regress, not get better, in terms of economic impact, as would local receipts. And I think when you couple those two components with the state aid and where we've just gotten back to after, I think it was 8 years loosely, and you used, I appreciate that you did, but you used, I believe, just state aid. I'm not sure you used the net aid. I think it might add an extra year if we use that in terms of getting back to equal. So we say words like structural revenue deficit, and we've been saying those for years since we've been engaged. And they shouldn't become common to us. It is a challenge that we face, especially if the economy slows down and or other stressors to other revenue exacerbates the challenge that we face. So I just think we as a community should not become immune to saying those words. Those are challenging words. If you have a challenging revenue environment, you have, by definition, must have an expense structure that fits it. That's how this works. And And so I think as we go through these budgets, understanding the pressure that this revenue situation places on us from an expense perspective in terms of staffing levels or services that we can provide or educational decisions that get made, I think this is a great presentation to help us begin to think of this paradigm in that way. So I won't use too many more words, but I just thought you did a great job getting us teed up for what's about to become a very important part of the budget process.
And I would just like to say that I think that this, coupled with looking at a long-term strategy, I know the budget subcommittee is trying to look at things over several years down the road to see what happens. You know, we've done a lot to find savings with solar energy efficiencies. The different departments have looked for savings within themselves to essentially do level-funded budgets in a lot of cases. But at the same time, even with the great things we're doing, and we have a lot to really be proud of for this year, there's a lot of deferred issues that we're kind of kicking the can down the road on that we have to look at. What does that look like in 5 to 10 years? Specifically, you know, the easiest one that comes to mind is the building maintenance. Right. You know, we have, what is it, about $80 million in building maintenance.
Right. Well, that was the Dore and Whittier report, which is now 5 years old.
So even more than that. And,
right.
And so while we are working within our budget and saving money, there's some bigger capital issues like that that we have to have a strategy for over the next several years. And hopefully new growth from Queesit and Five Corners, when those districts start to fill out, will really help keep that new growth number moving a little bit. So.
And that's a good point, Dottie, and it's something that the budget subcommittee is talking about, and we're going to work on in that really large size 3 font slide that I started with. That's actually buried in there somewhere. We don't have a name yet, but you'll see March, April TBD budget subcommittee presentation regarding town budget and strategic financial planning to the selectmen. This is one part of that. We're laying the groundwork here, so this is the first budget presentation. We'll have the community comparison report that's going to look more at the expense side of the house and the actual service delivery that we have. That'll get rolled in with the preliminary budget committee, as well as a couple of other key pieces that we're still firming up, but one of them is going to be asset management, and that's something that you brought up that's so important. We do have a capital budget every year, and we do pick priority items. But typically those are items relating to life-saving activity. I think we recently replaced a 31-year-old generator at the fire station. To borrow the superintendent's terminology and what the board has noted, we are budgeting from revenue backwards, which is, there's merit to, there's something to be said for budgeting with a very strict kind of tight belt mentality of you live within your means, and that's fine because we have to. We don't deficit spend. However, there's a cost to that. And when you're looking at funding ongoing operations, using one-time money that is not then used in a capital budget, there's a cost to be borne down the road for that. And so you have great facilities needs, you have road needs. We've been borrowing Chapter 90, so we're talking about operating the revenue we receive from the state every year is mainly Chapter 70 education aid and unrestricted general government aid. And the preliminary state budget was actually filed last week. And we are looking at, for fiscal 20, a preliminary increase of, oh gee, I'm sorry, it's somewhere in the area of 1%.
Yeah, I thought it was 0.83.
1.3%. So that's a tremendous challenge in and of itself. 1.3% is, you know, inflation is in the area of 2 to 3 right now. So even just having that keep up with what you have is a challenge, let alone trying to shift funding into that category away from one-time money, let alone doing that and even thinking about service improvement. So we end up in a reactive budgetary posture, both from the operating stance and from a capital management stance, in something that I've asked DPW Director Dave Field to do. When he is in before the board, should be in February, I believe, and presents his annual pavement management plan. we have, as a community, been supplementing the level-funded Chapter 90. So Chapter 90 is roadway funding from the state of Massachusetts. And that funding has not only not increased at even marginal amounts like 1%, it's been flat for many, many, many years. And the cost of construction does not stay flat for many, many, many years. And so our ability to maintain our roads, we have an excellent DPW. They have a very detailed, data-driven road surface management plan. They could tell you the exact amount of pavement they're going to apply on what road, when, and why. And they'll be even more long-winded and take more of your time than I do in doing it. But the Chapter 90 funding is not sufficient. And so we've been supplementing that every year with borrowing $500,000. And we don't pay off a borrow in 1 year. And so that has been a temporary stopgap that we've relied on for a few years to preserve and marginally improve our roadway quality in town. And we're not going to be able to keep doing that. And so when Dave Field comes to this board in a month or so to talk about the 5-year look forward on that pavement management plan, I've asked him to stagger off down to nothing any assumed local borrowing and show what impact that will have on our roads. And that's not to sound alarms or anything like that, but it's just to have that honest dialogue about what that cost is when we're in this reactionary position and we're trying to get through each of these successively lean years where we have diminishing margins. There's a cost down the road. And so we'll roll that into this kind of budget subcommittee review of the long-term strategic financing of the town, because that's a really, really important piece. And again, I tried to end it on positive, and now I've swung back to the darkness. But there are positive things too. We have major opportunities as well, such as we just have a superintendent in talking about the school planning project. It's an opportunity to repair tens of millions of dollars of quantified known needs and have the state of Massachusetts possibly contribute tens of millions of dollars to that to assist. So the challenges are very real. We have a lot of good opportunities as well.
And I would say, I don't think it in any way, shape, or form, talking about these challenges that we face, I don't look at it as a negative. I look at it as highlighting the facts or the details or the circumstances or the challenges that we may face. And I know you didn't mean it that way, but by doing so now, when we have an opportunity to engage and come up with the right solves in the right way that has the minimal amount of impact and or investment required and provides the maximum amount of return and benefit for the community. So I think having these frank discussions around this time is so important to help us understand both the challenges and the opportunities you presented them. So.
And I think it's also important for the public to understand that there's a lot of tough decisions being made to be able to come up with this budget, and there's sacrifices that are being made. And something that jumps to mind is the school resource officer. So everybody has their own areas of the budget that as residents that you really care a lot about. We care about public safety, we care about roads, we care about schools, but they're all making a lot of big sacrifices to make this work. So these discussions are helpful because there's a lot of planning, a lot of purpose, a lot of intentional direction in putting together all of these financial plans, starting with even the financial best practices that we've started to put in over the past few years. So a lot of work goes into this, and I think people need to understand that.
Absolutely.
And I echo what you say, Dot, that that the public should look at this online, and I commend Connor for the readability that I think that this summary has, that people can compare your writing about it and then go to the graphs and start to grasp it. I don't think you have to have a deep financial background to start understanding some of the issues that we're talking about.
And I can see Tom's computer from here, and he's not watching videos. He's on ClearGov. So that's a good opportunity to remind people that you can go to ClearGov, that's on the front page of the website, and take a look at all these numbers and compare them to other communities. And that site is always being updated. So
It's current through fiscal 19.
Yep.
Clear what?
ClearGov.
ClearGov.
Yep.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think I just want to have everybody run through this agenda. We skipped around all over the place. Did we miss anything?
I have everything checked off.
Check them all
Okay,
off.
great.
Minutes
So
remain.
the minutes dated November 19th, December 10th, and January 7th for general minutes. Anybody have any comments or questions on those?
I did not.
Somebody like to make a motion to accept those minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Craig and Tom, all in favor? Unanimous. The next one is the executive session minutes dated November 19th, to vote to accept but not release.
So moved.
Second?
Tom and Chuck, all in favor? Unanimous. Public participation?
Dottie, am I reading the agenda properly? I don't know if I have an outdated version. Do we have minutes from December 10th and January 7th on?
We just voted.
Yeah,
We accepted all
All
three.
three. Sorry, I apologize.
It's all right.
Not at all.
Town administrator notes?
Oh, you know what? I had them and I misplaced them, but I will, if you cover
Select-
for me, I will pull them
Selectmen
up.
notes?
I'd just like to say that I had the pleasure of going to a recent Lions Club event where a gentleman, Avery Lee Williams, was recognized for recruiting 250 people to join the Lions Club. I think most people know that the Lions Club does an awful lot in our community. And I would say that Lee may very well be the heart and soul of an organization that has a lot of hearts and soul. So just an incredible feat. I think at one point, Dr. Mudd raised his hand, asked anybody to raise their hand who had recruited more than 10 people, and there wasn't too many other hands that went up, maybe one. So at 250, I'd just like to recognize an accomplishment for a person who's done a lot for an organization that does a lot for our town. So it was a heck of an event to attend with some fellow select people. Chuck, Dottie, and Craig were able to make it, so it was a great event.
And Lee was very surprised, so not always a easy one to pull something over on him, but he was very happy and very surprised, so
Right.
congratulations.
So I did find my notes, if I may. I just wanted to briefly recognize, and we'll have an agenda item for the next meeting. But last Wednesday, the Easton Fire Department received an exceptional response award that was awarded and accepted by Chief Partridge and members of the department from Bristol North EMS and Good Sam in recognition of the response of Group 2 to a suspect who had been shot, and the fire department acted quickly, professionally, and was credited with saving this person's life. So they were recognized for their excellence in that response. They're a critical part of our public safety piece in town. So I wanted to acknowledge that now because it's last week, but we will have the folks from Group 2 come in for the next meeting.
Very good. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, we are going to go into an executive session under Purpose 3 of Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, subsection 21A, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, to discuss litigation relating to non-union personnel, Timothy Griffin, and to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining and the Easton Police Supervisors Association. We are going to make a motion to adjourn into executive session for that purpose, not to come back to open session. And that is a first and a second and a roll call vote. So
moved.
Second.
So that's Tom and Craig. Chuck?
King, yes?
Broussard, yes?
Barger, yes?
Full Janetti, yes?
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.